Flight attendant slaps black billionaire's son. Seconds later, the flight freezes on the tarmac. What if a simple act of defiance on a flight could spark a chain reaction that changes everything? Olivia Carter adjusted her navy blue scarf, smoothing it against her crisp airline uniform. At 32, she'd spent nearly a decade in the skies, her warm smile and quick wit a shield against the chaos of air travel. Born and raised in a working-class neighborhood in Queens, Olivia knew the value of $1 and the weight of a hard day's work. Her mother, a nurse, and her father, a retired bus driver, had instilled in her a fierce sense of pride and resilience. She loved her job, connecting with passengers, solving problems mid-flight, and seeing the world from 30,000 feet. But the long hours, the aching feet, and the occasional entitled passenger tested her patience. Today, on a flight bound for Los Angeles, Olivia moved through the first-class cabin with her usual grace, offering drinks and checking seat assignments. Her hazel eyes scanned the rows, catching the usual mix of business travelers, celebrities, and the occasional nervous flyer. But one passenger stood out. Kieran Hayes, 24, lounged in seat 3A, his tailored suit and gold watch screaming wealth. His dark eyes flicked over her dismissively as she approached, his phone already pressed to his ear, his voice loud enough to draw stares. Kieran was the only son of Richard Hayes, a tech billionaire whose name was synonymous with innovation and ruthlessness. Kieran had grown up in a world of private jets, penthouses, and unchecked privilege. But beneath the designer clothes and smug confidence, there was a restlessness, a gnawing need to prove himself. His father's shadow loomed large, and Kieran's life had become a performance of power, each interaction a chance to assert his dominance. He'd boarded the flight already irritated, a delayed meeting in LA souring his mood. As Olivia offered him a pre-flight drink, Kieran waved her off without looking up. "Just get me a whiskey. And make it quick," he snapped, his tone dripping with entitlement. Olivia's smile didn't falter, but her grip on the tray tightened. She'd dealt with passengers like him before, wealthy, demanding, and oblivious to the word no. But something about Kieran's dismissive sneer set her teeth on edge. The plane taxied toward the runway, the cabin lights dimming as the safety announcement played. Olivia moved through the aisle, checking seatbelts and offering reassuring nods. Kieran, now sipping his whiskey, called her over again. "This is watered down," he said, holding up the glass. "Do your job properly and get me another one." Olivia's jaw clenched, but she kept her voice steady. "Sir, I assure you the drink is standard. If you'd like, I can bring you another." Kieran's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a smirk. "Standard? Figures someone like you wouldn't know the difference." His voice carried, drawing the attention of nearby passengers. "What's your name again?" "Olivia. Bet you're used to serving cheap stuff in whatever hole you crawled out of." The words hit like a punch. Olivia felt the heat rise in her chest, her years of professionalism warring with the urge to respond. She took a breath, forcing a smile. "Sir, I'm happy to assist with anything you need, but please keep your comments respectful." Kieran laughed, a cold, mocking sound. "Respectful? For a glorified waitress? You're lucky I'm even talking to you." His voice grew louder, more vicious. "People like you don't belong telling me what to do. You're nothing." The cabin fell silent. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, some pretending not to hear, others staring openly. Olivia's hands trembled, her heart pounding. She'd heard insults before, but this was different. It wasn't just about her job. It was about her. Her background. Her existence. Years of biting her tongue, of swallowing disrespect, surged to the surface. Before she could stop herself, her hand flew up, and a sharp slap rang out. Kieran's head snapped to the side, his hand flying to his cheek. The cabin gasped. Olivia froze, her breath catching in her throat. She'd crossed a line, and she knew it. Kieran's eyes blazed with rage, but before he could speak, the plane lurched violently, throwing Olivia against a seat. The engines whined, then fell silent. The lights flickered, and the plane came to a dead stop on the tarmac. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, We're experiencing an unexpected delay. Please remain seated while we assess the situation. His tone was calm, but there was an edge to it, a hint of confusion that set Olivia's nerves on edge. Passengers murmured, checking their phones and glancing out the windows. The tarmac stretched out under the harsh glare of runway lights, but nothing moved. No ground crew. No vehicles. Just stillness. Olivia's heart raced as she made her way to the galley, her mind replaying the slap. Had she just thrown away her career? Her life? She could feel the weight of every passenger's stare, the whispers already spreading. In the galley, her colleague, Maria, grabbed her arm. What the hell was that, Liv? You slapped him? Do you know who that guy is? I know, Olivia whispered, her voice shaky. I couldn't take it anymore. Maria's eyes softened, but her voice was urgent. His father owns half the tech world. You need to fix this before we're all out of a job. Olivia nodded, but her stomach churned. She glanced back at Kieran, who was now on his phone, his expression unreadable. The other passengers were restless, some demanding answers, others filming the scene with their phones. The air felt thick, oppressive, as if the plane itself was holding its breath. An hour passed, then two. The captain made no further announcements. The crew tried contacting air traffic control, but the radios were silent. The airline's internal systems were down, screens frozen with error messages. Olivia's unease grew. This wasn't just a delay. Something was wrong, something tied to Kieran. As the delay stretched into its third hour, Kieran stood, his presence commanding the cabin's attention. He walked toward Olivia, who was stationed near the galley, her arms crossed tightly. The other passengers watched, sensing the tension. You think you can humiliate me and get away with it? Kieran said, his voice low but venomous. Do you have any idea what I can do to you? To this airline? Olivia met his gaze, her fear giving way to defiance. I know exactly who you are, Kieran. And I know you're used to getting your way. But you don't get to treat people like garbage just because you have money. Kieran's jaw tightened, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, uncertainty, maybe even shame. He leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. You think this plane's stuck here by accident? My father has people everywhere. One call, and I can make sure you never work again. The word sent a chill down Olivia's spine, but she held her ground. Then why haven't you made that call yet? She shot back. Maybe because deep down, you know you're wrong. Kieran flinched, just for a moment, but it was enough. Olivia saw it, the crack in his armor. She pressed on, her voice steady but firm. You think your money makes you better than me? Than anyone on this plane? You're not your father, Kieran. And you never will be. The words hit harder than the slap. Kieran's face paled, his hands clenching into fists. For a moment, it seemed like he might lash out again, but instead, he turned and walked back to his seat, his shoulders slumped. The media caught wind of the delay, and by the fourth hour, the story was everywhere. Flight grounded after flight attendant slaps billionaire's son, screamed the headlines. Social media exploded, with some praising Olivia's courage and others condemning her actions. The airline issued a vague statement, but the lack of answers only fueled the frenzy. In the cabin, the mood was tense. Passengers were growing restless, and the crew was running out of ways to keep them calm. Olivia felt the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She'd acted on impulse, and now her entire career, her life, was at risk. But something else was happening. As the hours dragged on, Kieran's demeanor began to shift. He sat alone, staring out the window, his phone untouched. Olivia watched him from a distance, noticing the way his hands fidgeted, the way his shoulders sagged. She'd seen that look before, not in passengers, but in herself, during moments of doubt and fear. Against her better judgment, she approached him. Kieran, she said softly, why are you doing this? Why keep us here? He didn't look at her at first, his voice barely audible. You think I want this? You think I like being the guy everyone hates? He turned to her, his eyes raw with emotion. My whole life, I've been Richard Hayes' son. Not Kieran. Just the son. Everything I do, it's never enough. So yeah, I push people around. It's the only way I feel like I exist. Olivia was stunned. She'd expected arrogance, not vulnerability. For the first time, she saw Kieran not as a spoiled brat, but as a young man trapped in a life he didn't know how to escape. The standoff couldn't last forever. After nearly 6 hours, the captain's voice came over the intercom again. Ladies and gentlemen, we've received clearance to depart. Please prepare for takeoff. The cabin erupted in cheers, but Olivia felt a knot in her stomach. She glanced at Kieran, who was still staring out the window. As the plane began to move, she made a decision. She sat down across from him, ignoring the curious stares from other passengers. You don't have to be your father, she said. You can choose to be better. Kieran's eyes met hers, and for the first time, there was no anger, no defiance. Just exhaustion. I don't know how, he admitted. Then start by doing the right thing, Olivia said. Not for me, not for the cameras, but for you. The plane climbed into the sky, the tension in the cabin easing as the lights of New York faded below. But the real twist came hours later, as the plane approached Los Angeles. Kieran stood, addressing the entire cabin. His voice was steady, but there was a tremor in it. I owe someone an apology, he said, his eyes locked on Olivia. I was out of line. Not just today but always. I've used my name, my money, to make people feel small. And I'm sorry. The cabin was silent, every passenger hanging on his words. Kieran continued, his voice growing stronger. I'm making a donation, effective immediately, to a foundation that supports aviation workers. People like Olivia, who deal with people like me every day and still show up with a smile. Olivia's breath caught. She hadn't expected this. Not from him. When the plane landed in Los Angeles, the world was waiting. Reporters swarmed the gate, cameras flashing as Olivia stepped off the plane. The story had become a sensation, a lightning rod for discussions about class, race, and power. Olivia's slap was no longer just an incident, it was a symbol. In the days that followed, Olivia was inundated with interview requests, advocacy groups, and even job offers. She was hesitant at first, unsure if she wanted to be the face of a movement. But the support from her fellow flight attendants, from service workers across the country, changed her mind. She began speaking out, sharing her story and the stories of others who'd been belittled and dismissed. Kieran, meanwhile, kept his promise. The donation, $10 million, funded scholarships, training programs, and mental health resources for aviation workers. He didn't stop there. He reached out to Olivia, not to ask for forgiveness, but to offer his support. You said I could be better, he told her. I want to try. Together, they began working on a project, a consulting firm focused on workplace dignity, helping companies create environments where every employee, from the CEO to the janitor, was treated with respect. It wasn't easy. Kieran's past followed him, and Olivia faced criticism from those who thought she'd gone too far. But they pushed forward, driven by a shared belief that change was possible. A year later, Olivia stood at a podium, addressing a room full of airline workers. Her uniform was gone, replaced by a tailored blazer, but her warmth and strength remained. We're not just flight attendants, or servers, or cleaners, she said. We're people. And we deserve to be seen. In the audience, Kieran watched, a quiet smile on his face. He wasn't the same man who'd boarded that flight. Neither was Olivia the same woman. Their collision, born of anger and pain, had sparked something greater, a movement, a partnership, a chance to rewrite their stories. And somewhere, 30,000 feet above, another flight soared, carrying passengers who'd never know the story of the plane that froze on the tarmac. But for those who did, it was a reminder. Courage, even in a moment of fury, could change everything.